From the high glam poses of Madonna's Vogue to the emotional power in Mariah Carey's debut, 1990 was the sound of a new decade waking up. The synths were cooler, the beats were tighter, and every artist was looking for their moment at the top. These are all the songs that hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1990. Michael Bolton, How Am I Supposed to Live Without You? By mid-January, Michael Bolton had finally broken through. His voice was raw silk wrapped around a cry for help. How Am I Supposed to Live Without You wasn't just a ballad, it was an outburst. The verses walked, but the chorus ran, full of pleading and power. Columbia Records pushed it hard and the track delivered. 3 weeks at #1 proved audiences were not just listening, they were feeling it. Love Gone Wrong had been sung 1,000 times before, but Bolton made it feel like the end of the world. Then, almost overnight, the tears dried and the dance floor lit up. What came next was pure movement. Paula Abdul and the Wild Pair, Opposites Attract.
When we get together, it just all works out.
It was late February when Paula Abdul stepped in with her most playful hit. Opposites Attract mixed funky beats, animated swagger, and chemistry you could hear. While the verses stayed smooth, the hook snapped back with attitude. It was a pop record wearing breakdance sneakers.
Steps forward, take 2 steps back.
Released by Virgin Records, it spent 3 weeks at #1. Abdul already had momentum, but this one made her unstoppable. MC Scat Cat may have been a cartoon, but the record was real. It worked because it never tried too hard. Just fun, flavor, and a wink to anyone paying attention. And then it flipped again. No cartoons, no gimmicks, just rhythm, control, and the sound of a star hitting her stride. Janet Jackson Escapade. March arrived, and so did Escapade. This was Janet Jackson at her lightest. Where Rhythm Nation had punched hard, this track spun freely. Escapade sounded like a 3-minute vacation. Synths sparkled, beats popped, and her voice rode the wave like a breeze across water. Released under A&M Records, it stayed on top for 3 weeks. Janet was not chasing the charts, she was commanding them. Escapade gave her space to breathe and listeners in parties, a reason to move. But every party has a shadow, and in April, that shadow took shape in a song that walked slow, talked low, and carried a southern kind of mystery. Alannah Myles, Black Velvet. In April, something swampy slid onto the charts. Black Velvet came in slow, smoky, and drenched in blues rock. Alannah Myles whispered and wailed like she had been carrying that Elvis story for decades. It was part tribute, part seduction, and it did not ask for your attention. It took it. Released by Atlantic Records, it sat at #1 for 2 weeks. The guitars groaned, the vocals dripped, and the entire track felt like it belonged in a dark bar with a jukebox glowing red. What followed next was a complete shift in energy. The mood lifted, the tempo jumped, and the keys were handed to a vocal powerhouse. Dayne, Love Will Lead You Back. By late April, Dayne delivered one of the year's most heartfelt ballads. Love Will Lead You Back was a promise wrapped in longing. Her voice was strong, but every note trembled with hope. It was not just a love song, it was a bet on fate. Released by Arista Records, the track climbed to #1 and held for a week. Dayne made every line feel personal. She was not pleading, she was waiting while believing. It stood out with emotions in a chart season crowded with dance tracks and hooks. But just as quickly, things picked back up. A different voice stepped in, smooth as velvet, with a song born for the radio. Sinéad O'Connor, Nothing Compares to You. In May, Sinéad O'Connor turned silence into sound. Nothing Compares to You was spare, minimal, and somehow more powerful because of it. Her voice floated over strings and space, holding every bit of grief in place. You did not just hear her, you sat with her pain.
So lonely without you.
Released by Chrysalis Records, it held the #1 spot for 4 weeks. The track, written by Prince, became hers completely. It shattered expectations, ignored trends, and still dominated the airwaves. Even her tears in the music video felt real, because they were. And just when vulnerability had taken center stage, the vibe changed again. Next up was a groove that refused to sit still. Madonna, Vogue. May was not ready for this. Vogue dropped with the force of a fashion show and the elegance of a whispered command. Madonna transformed runway culture into a pop movement. This was not just a hit, it was a cultural reset. She gave names to legends and rhythm to poses. Released by Sire Records, the track stayed at #1 for 3 weeks. Vogue had house beats, dramatic strings, and a vocal delivery that sounded both cool and commanding. You could dance to it, you could live inside it, and you absolutely remembered it. But once the lights faded and the catwalk cleared, something warmer stepped in, a group with harmonies so tight they could pull you back from any edge. Wilson Phillips, Hold On. June gave the spotlight to Wilson Phillips, and they did not waste a second. Hold On was a message in a melody. 3 voices, 1 promise. It was about holding out for better days, and it hit at a time when people really needed to hear it. Released by SBK Records, it rose to #1 and held for a week. The trio's harmonies lifted the song far above its simple structure. It was a soft anthem, encouraging, not loud. It sounded like hope wrapped in sunlight. A quiet storm that stayed with you, but the calm did not last long. Up next was a singer who brought gospel fire, vocal gymnastics, and one of the most powerful debuts in pop history. Mariah Carey, Vision of Love. July arrived, and so did Mariah Carey. Vision of Love was her first #1, and she wasted no time showing exactly what she could do. Her voice soared, whispered, pleaded, and proved. Every note felt intentional. Every run felt earned. Released by Columbia Records, the song held the top spot for 4 weeks. Critics praised her range, but it was the emotion that stuck. This was not just a vocal showcase, it was a blueprint. One debut track that launched a career and inspired a generation of singers. Then came something entirely different. Less vocal fireworks, more street-smart flow, and a beat that looped until it locked in your head. Sweet Sensation, If Wishes Came True. There is something timeless about a ballad that sounds like a dream. If Wishes Came True gave Sweet Sensation their biggest moment, slowing things down with orchestration and heart. The vocals were raw with yearning, and the lyrics sounded like they were pulled straight from a diary entry. It was not just about love, it was about the kind of love that never quite shows up. Atco Records released the song, and it climbed to #1 for just 1 week. Still, that week sealed it in pop history. Sweet Sensation became more than just a dance act. For a brief moment, they became storytellers with strings behind them. And as that orchestral ache faded, the charts made space for a softer kind of promise. A new voice stepped in, ready to offer not just a song, but a pledge wrapped in pop melody. Tommy Page, I'll Be Your Everything. This was a teenage daydream come to life. Tommy Page was not trying to reinvent the wheel. He was just offering a song that sounded like a love letter folded into a locker note. It had sincerity, sweetness, and that unmistakable early 90s sparkle.
I'll be your everything.
Released in April by Sire Records, the song reached #1 for a single week. It was a fleeting moment, but a loud one. For fans, it was more than enough. For Page, it became the defining mark of his short but shining pop story. Then came the sound of Fire and Dust, not a ballad, a full-blown anthem pulled from a Western showdown. Jon Bon Jovi, Blaze of Glory.
I'm a devil on the run, a six-gun lover.
There was grit in every line. Blaze of Glory came in with guns drawn, soaked in Western heat, and driven by moral conflict. Jon Bon Jovi turned a film soundtrack into a solo mission, stepping out of the band spotlight and walking straight into the legend of Billy the Kid. Released in August under Mercury Records, the song blazed to number 1 and held the spot for 1 week. It had cinematic weight and radio strength. Bon Jovi delivered it like a man with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. After all that smoke and dust, the charts brought a different sound. This time it was smooth, shiny, and riding the summer breeze. Glenn Medeiros featuring Bobby Brown, She Ain't Worth It. Some songs bring two worlds together. She Ain't Worth It did just that. Glenn Medeiros had the vocals. Bobby Brown brought the groove. The result was a polished blend of pop and new jack swing, complete with shoulder-shaking beats and breakup bravado. The track hit number 1 for 2 weeks in July and was released by MCA Records. It had energy, attitude, and just the right amount of drama. They were not begging for love, they were moving on, and they made sure it sounded fun. And before that rhythm could settle in, a heartbreak anthem crossed over from a Swedish pop powerhouse, a soft echo from a breakup scene that became unforgettable. Roxette, It Must Have Been Love. There is a silence that follows certain songs, not because they are quiet, but because they leave you thinking. That is what Roxette gave the world in May. It Must Have Been Love was not just emotional, it was heavy. It carried the weight of something already lost and the ache of what could never return. Released in May by EMI, the song spent 2 weeks at number 1. It first appeared on a Christmas compilation, but was reborn through a movie and made timeless by heartbreak. The lyrics did not scream. They whispered truths people do not always want to hear. This was not a happy ending. It was the moment just after. And just when it seemed the charts would drown in ballads, energy roared back in matching outfits and high steps. New Kids on the Block, Step by Step. When this track dropped in June, it felt like the air changed. Step by Step was not interested in poetry or subtlety. It came to move bodies and boost teen posters. It had a countdown chorus, sharp choreography, and the power to make an arena erupt. The song was released by Columbia Records and held the number 1 spot for 3 weeks. It was loud, proud, and fully in sync with its moment. Every beat was tailored for maximum crowd response. New Kids on the Block did not follow trends. For a while, they were the trend, and that was 1990 and 15 number 1s. Which track still takes you back the moment you hear it? Drop your favorite in the comments. And if you're into these deep dives through music history, go ahead and subscribe. More timeless countdowns are coming soon.